And my name is Joe LaValle, and I will be interim chair for this meeting. We're going to take a little difference from the minutes that we have here. We're going to take the notice of intent for the Whitnap project. This is a continued hearing, file number 061-0760. Do I have somebody here representing this project? Would you please come forward?
Good evening. My name is Lisbeth Bejo. I'm with Redgate, the project proponent. We'd like to allow Frank Stringy from the city to be able to speak first, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Commission members and the chair. I know you have a full agenda tonight. I just wanted to give a brief overview and history of how this project culminated. So we all know this shoreline has been neglected and ignored as far as we can remember, going way back before Fowler's Marina, with the lack of accessibility to the public. So the city embarked on a plan to create a master plan and received funding from the Massachusetts Economic Seaport Council to create a master plan for the area. So the area encumbered 19 acres, and it was bordered by Thayer Ave to the south and the GE Bridge to the north, including the Thayer Ave Boatyard, Gibson Park, the G&J site, and the Mirage site. So the elements of that master plan included restoration of the shoreline for public access, including boardwalks, improvements to Gibson Park, with resiliency measures for stormwater management and flood protection. Acquisition of the Thayer Ave Boatyard for community boating programs, and connecting that boatyard in with Gibson Park. Also, the other elements include a transportation component, which included a roundabout that would connect Gibson Park to public access from the Linway, and detour traffic away from Mills Avenue to Gibson Park, so they would not have to go through the neighborhood. So the roundabout would have a direct access to the parking lot at Gibson Park, and a proposed direct access to the G&J site. And that plan involved, ramp configuration from the north and the south to improve access to the site for both pedestrian vehicles and bicycles. The plan also included development for the G&J site, long neglected G&J site, to include a mixed-use development that was sensitive to the natural resources of the area, and created a balance of public amenities to support that area. We were fortunate enough, as the plan developed, to have Redgate step in, and they finally came to an agreement with a purchase and sale agreement with the Angulo family for the development of that site. They worked with the city and the city council on their development plan, and an outgrowth of the master plan also included the creation of a zoning overlay district. We call it the Riverfront Overlay District. The zoning was created for this district that include increased open space requirements, public amenities and restoration of shoreline, building scale and heights and setbacks that were compatible to the area. Less impactful than what you see along the Revere Beach Boulevard in terms of the height and scale of those buildings. We worked with Redgate on their development proposal. We put together a team of multidisciplinary engineers, architects, landscape architects, and environmental engineers on the plan. And it's a plan that the city is very much supportive of because it creates benefits to that area that never existed before and opens the shoreline to public access that never existed before. And it'll be a catalyst for other improvements in the area, infrastructure improvements, including restoration of wetlands, resiliency measures for stormwater management, rain gardens, bioswales that will help protect flooding in the riverside area, including plans for a pump station and increased drainage improvements. So that's how we got here, and we focused mostly on resiliency measures for this development, for stormwater management, and including what I discussed about rain gardens, bioswales, which Katie will give you in detail. They have come before the Site Plan Review Committee. We've had a preliminary meeting. We're going to have continued meetings on this. We basically approved the site plan and layout of the building, the design of the building, the landscaping, the walkways that are being put in, the parking. Everything has been approved by Site Plan Review. There's a few elements that we have to review further, and that includes infrastructure improvements to our water and sewer system. One critical aspect is that we want to, before we can issue a sewer connection permit for this project, they have to do improvements to the sewer pump station on the Linway. That is very essential and important to the city, and we will not further review the project at the site plan review level until we meet with their engineering team on a solution for that pump station.
Frank, would you mind just putting the mic a little bit closer? It's hard to hear you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So, again, there are a number of permitting, environmental permits that go along with this project. They've already received their MEPA certificate. They filed an ENF. Right now, they've filed for the Chapter 91 waterways license. You will find out that the site is pretty much constrained under Chapter 91. There's a good portion of the site that is undevelopable because it's in filled tidelands and under Chapter 91 jurisdiction. They need, obviously, permits from EPA, general permit, because it, under water quality management, because disturbing more than 1 acre, coastal zone management review, and possibly Army Corps of Engineers review for work that they're going to do with the pier. That's another public aspect and benefit of the project is restoration of the pier that exists on the site that is dilapidated. So our goal is to restore that pier for public use. Another positive benefit that's going to come from this project. So I know there were concerns from the neighborhood. I know your role is strictly with being the watchdog and for the Wetlands Protection Act and resource areas along the site. So I know they're in good hands with your review, and they've done their work, and you'll see from their plan that this is going to be a positive project that's going to enhance environmental conditions of the site tremendously. Okay, I'll be around for any questions further from the commission.
Mr. Stringy, let me clarify something for the public. What you're saying here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the building and the occupancy and all of this kind of work couldn't be done until they meet the other recommendations as far as the pumping station. I mean, we're not putting a cart before the horse here and causing a problem that has to be corrected down the line. This all has to be done before.
Right. They won't complete the site plan review process unless we approve that plan.
And that would be also whatever is necessary in the pumping station?
Pumping station and the water line servicing the site has to be improved and looped into the Linway service. Right now, it's a dead end on the riverside, which creates a water quality problem. They're going to loop that line and connect it to the 10-inch line on the Linway. So we'll have a looped water service, the whole Point of Pines area, which will improve water quality and pressure in the area.
One other question, too. I've been on this board for quite some time, and if I recall, a lot of the projects on the beach from the site of their building, including even the St. George, they had to pay for an increase in the diameter of the pipe going south, is that true?
That's true, yeah.
Now, what happens with something at this far end of the line, the sewer line?
Yeah, we're getting sewer mitigation money from this project. Probably over $500,000 will come out of this project. What we will do, we'll use that money in the project area to improve the sewer line even further. Right now, we're requiring every development along the beach to increase that sewer line to an 18-inch. It's now a 15-inch. Our goal is to have it's a 24-inch down at St. George, and then we're having it an 18-inch all the way up to the gravity that feeds out of the pump station. So the force main of the pump station has been done over. The pumps have been done over. Right now, we need improvements done to the wet well. So their engineers are working on that, and they're going to be meeting with myself, Nick Rystrom, and Don Charamello very shortly on their plan for improvements.
And that pumping station down the Pines, that is not supposed to be working continuously, is that correct? It's only a surge pump, or does that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And that's what you're looking to have them improve?
Right.
Or add a pump?
Improve the wet well so it's not going on all the time. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the board?
I have one more question for you, Frank. During our site tour, Redgate was discussing the possibility of starting the construction process in the winter timeframe. So do you see that these plans are going to come together and be approved for that timeframe?
They'll have to be done concurrently. They won't receive an occupancy permit until all those improvements are completed. So they'll be working on the infrastructure improvements concurrently with the building permit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Good evening. Again, my name is Lisbeth Bejo. I'm with Redgate. Thank you again for your time tonight and everybody here attending. We're going to be discussing, as you know, the 22 Whitnap Avenue project. And I just want to give a little bit of background of who we are. You know, Redgate has been working in the city of Revere for the last 5 or 6 years. And we really look to develop land that's underutilized, and we try to be very thoughtful in bringing public improvements and amenities to the neighborhoods that we work in. So, you know, some of you may be familiar, One Beachmont over by the Beachmont station that we developed. That was a former Shaw's that was vacant for roughly 10 years. We also developed 500 Ocean Avenue, which is right next to the Wonderland station. And that one brought the Drift Restaurant and the Fine Line Tap Room up on the plaza deck across the station. And we most recently developed Ryder, which is on the Boulevard. And that one brought a new restaurant, Cut 21, as well, in which we worked actually very closely with the city and with DCR to help activate that section of the Boulevard. So I'd like to provide just a general overview of the project and where we are in the permitting process. Frank mentioned some of the steps that we've gone through. The project we're proposing is a mixed-use 6-story building with 291 units. They're for rent. And it also includes an approximately 1,600 retail space. And that one is going to serve as an amenity not only for the residents of the building, but also for the Point of Pines neighborhood and the Riverside neighborhood, especially because it's within walking distance. And for anybody else, right, that's going to be taking advantage of the amenities at Gibson Park, as well as the boardwalk that we're proposing along the shoreline. As Frank mentioned earlier, the city underwent a thoughtful master planning process, and this site is one component of that master plan. And our proposal complies with the underlying riverfront overlay district. It complies with the allowable uses as well as the dimensional requirements that are established there. So here we have an aerial. I think it's important just to clarify scope, because I realize there has been some confusion regarding the scope of the project as well as what is intended through the master planning process as well. So the scope of the project.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can you point that to the camera? I think the camera's over there so the people that are watching online can see it,
Sure.
or on TV.
Okay. So you can see the scope of the project is highlighted in yellow. It includes obviously the main 22 Whitten lot, which includes the current buildings of the G&J towing site. It also includes some of the parking area. It doesn't include the work that's being contemplated as part of the master plan within Gibson Park. However, we are working really closely with the city to make sure that we're creating really strong connections to the pedestrian pathways that are contemplated through the master plan, as well as providing a new boardwalk along the entire shoreline that will be for public access, which right now there is no public access to that shoreline through the property. It doesn't include the Route 1A ramps reconfiguration. However, I think it goes without saying, we understand how important that is to the city and the neighborhood, as well as it's ultimately going to provide a better access point to our site. So we are separately but in parallel working with the city and Mass DOT to progress that effort. And the city recently applied for a MassWorks grant for design and permitting. And the plan as proposed actually accommodates both a temporary access point through the existing Whitnap extension that currently gives access to the site, but it also accommodates the future permanent access point directly off the ramps once they are reconfigured. The project also, it doesn't include the Mirage site, which is privately owned, as most of you know, and it doesn't include the pier. However, we are going to be working really closely with the city on that effort, and we are providing 15 public parking spaces closest to the pier, which is going to serve not only the future pier, but also just the boardwalk use by the public as well as Gibson Park. So there are several resource areas within this site, which Katie's going to be going into detail. But I just want to recognize that the majority of the site is within an ACEC, which is an area of critical environmental concern. And let me just flip here. So the site itself right now is in pretty poor condition, and the shoreline is very dilapidated. And right now, as I mentioned, it's used for auto operations. So any runoff that happens on site due to those uses can contribute to poor water quality. Additionally, there is no treatment right now of stormwater runoff. It just sheets off directly into the river and the resource areas. The shoreline, I think some of you may have gone to the site walk on Saturday. It's in pretty poor condition. It's mostly rubble and rock and asphalt, which really just enables, I would say, sediment to really flow into the resource areas, into the salt marsh, into the flats as well. So the project that we're proposing is meant to really rectify these conditions and improve the functions of these resource areas and this section of the ACEC. So I want to just add, the project has been subject to a fairly extensive permitting process, for sure. We have gone through an ANRAD process, which just clearly determined which resource areas are on the site. We held a public meeting in April to discuss the project scope with the community and discuss the design and the layout. As Frank mentioned, we had a site plan review meeting, which is meant to ensure that we are aligned with the master plan vision, but that also that we're not creating and we're not proposing something that's detrimental to the neighborhood or the environment. And we are planning to go back, as Frank mentioned, to site plan review. And we also went through a very extensive MIPA review process, which resulted in approximately 60-day comment period. And through that time, we had countless conversations with DEP, CZM, DMF, Division of Marine Fisheries. And through that process, our team actually developed a report that was issued to MIPA, analyzing the impacts of flooding, wave action, and sea level rise over the next 50 years. And it found that the project is actually designed to be very resilient to these environmental conditions. It's not expected to create or exacerbate any impacts on resource areas, and in fact, is expected to improve the resource areas. And it found that it is in compliance with state regulations for projects within ACECs. So based on those analyses, MEPA issued the certificate on June 1st, and just recognizing that we had adequately analyzed the environmental impacts of the project. We also filed for a Chapter 91 license, as Frank mentioned as well, in late June, and that's because the majority of the boardwalk is within their jurisdiction. We've had countless conversations with the EP Waterways to date. They're very supportive, and we expect that the EP is going to be posting a public notice soon that will kick off the public comment period. And we're in the process of filing a water quality certificate application as well as Army Corps permit application, which will also trigger CCM federal consistency review. So, that's all to say that this is a very extensive permitting process, as many of you know, and there's a lot of agencies and departments that are reviewing it to make sure that we're studying the impacts, mitigating or minimizing them as best as possible, and also that we're complying with the appropriate regulations. So I just also want to mention that to the extent that there's any comments or questions related to zoning or site plan review or planning and development, we're more than happy to stick around after the presentation as well to answer those questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Katie Cruz with Hancock Associates. They're our civil engineer. Thank you.
So I am Katie Cruz, the civil engineer for the project. I'm with Hancock Associates, and I would like to present the site layout to you, as well as the stormwater system, site grading, utilities, and then compliance with the performance standards of the various wetland resource areas that are present on the project site. As Liz said, the project site is a 14-acre site. About 5 acres of the site is in upland area, so upland of the coastal bank, and then there's a significant portion of the site that's either in the intertidal or subtidal zone, so underwater in this portion. The proposed project is a residential building that will include a parking area on the east side of the building, as well as parking under the building. And these spaces here are the 15 public parking spaces that Liz mentioned. A significant component of the site is public access, and there's a lot of site amenities intended for public access, including a boardwalk along the face of the building, along the shoreline, that's 20 feet wide and approximately 500 feet long. There's what the area we're calling the point on the western side of the site that'll include lawn space, bocce courts, landscaping, seating, lighting, all for public use. So the public will have use of the entire shoreline on the project site in the proposed condition. In the existing condition, the majority of the site is either paved or hard packed gravel, and there's no current provisions for stormwater mitigation or treatment. Stormwater either flows to the north via sheet flow off of the shoreline or to a drainage ditch that's along the 1A ramps and along Gibson Park, and also eventually gets to the rivers via that direction. Our marine engineer is here today, and he's going to speak about the proposed shoreline improvements after my portion of the presentation. The proposed stormwater system is designed to collect and treat stormwater runoff from all of the parking and vehicular paved areas. That includes 2 rain gardens, these blue areas within the parking area, and an area of porous pavement along this side, which includes a sand filter below it, which will treat water. So only clean water from the project site will be exiting to the river, either via 3 proposed new outfalls along the shoreline, or sheet flow from pedestrian areas, which is also considered clean. The outfalls will be equipped with riprap pads, which will provide energy dissipation of the stormwater leaving the site and prevent erosion in the downstream resource areas. We've heard a lot of concerns about stormwater from the site, and I wanted to address those. Concerns about stormwater getting to abutting neighborhoods, abutting properties, and I wanted to assure you that this project will drastically improve those conditions and won't have any impact on any of the surrounding areas. So first of all, there's no connections to any municipal sewer systems proposed as part of this project. All of the water will drain directly to the rivers. Right now, a significant portion of the site drains to this drainage ditch along the off-ramps in the park, and we're redirecting that water, so we're taking all of that area, collecting it, treating it, and sending it to the north. So that's going to be a lot less water. Almost all of the water is going to be removed from that ditch that currently gets there from the project site. So it's going to be a big improvement in terms of drainage in the proposed condition. First of all, by providing treatment and also the way the site is graded to direct water to the north to the Saugus River. The site grading is driven by a few factors. We tried to maintain existing grades as much as possible, but the few factors were the elevations of our stormwater management system. The underdrains within the rain gardens and the porous pavement are set at the spring high tide elevation so that that system will continue to function during high tide events. Grading was developed to provide access to the proposed building as well as meeting the existing grades along the property lines. I know Frank talked quite a bit about the proposed utilities. I wanted to reiterate again that we will be proposing a water main that's going to run in this direction through the site. It's going to be an 8-inch main that connects 10-inch mains in the Linway and in Gibson Park, which is going to provide a secondary source of water to the Riverside neighborhood, which I understand often gets cut off during maintenance, and like Frank said, to provide better water quality and pressure to that neighborhood. As he alluded to, the Redgate, the developer, is committed to improvements to the municipal pump station at 70 Linway. There will also be a pump station on our project site that's going to control the rate of sewage flow that leaves the site and enters the main in the Linway so that we won't be overwhelming the capacity of that main, and we won't be causing any issues there. Electric and gas utilities will be connected to the existing infrastructure in the public rights-of-ways. As Liz mentioned, the project site, a portion of the project site is within the Rumney Marshes area of critical environmental concern. That includes about 4.6 acres of the upland area within existing elevation 10. And the project has been designed to preserve and protect the ACEC a few different ways. One of them is the stormwater management system, which will provide the water quality, improve the water quality leaving the site. It'll stabilize the shoreline, which Anders will talk about, and it'll remove the existing uses that are currently not as amenable to the habitats within the ACEC. There's a number of wetland resource areas on the project site, which I will run through. Like Liz said, those were confirmed by the commission in February of this year via an order of resource area delineation. And the project has been designed to comply with all of the performance standards of those wetland resource areas. The project is in land subject to coastal storm flowage, which coincides with the FEMA 100-year flood elevation of 10. And we have designed the site knowing that it's within the floodplain, and it's been designed for resiliency and protection of the resource areas. There's an area of bordering vegetated wetland within the park and slightly around the project site on the western side. Over here, we are not proposing any work that would touch that bordering vegetated wetland. We are proposing work within the 100-foot buffer zone, but via the stormwater management system and the proposed site layout, we'll be protecting that resource area. There is a 200-foot riverfront area on the project site that runs parallel to the Saugus River. The entirety of the riverfront area is previously disturbed, and all of our work will be within that disturbed area. We meet the performance standards of that by providing the stormwater management system where there currently isn't one, by adding landscaped areas and permeable surfaces. We're reducing the paved surfaces on site by about 3/4 of an acre and adding landscaped areas as well as various permeable surfaces such as permeable pavers, stone dust, and porous pavement. And we're going to meet the performance standards of all of the other resource areas. There is tidal flat within the project property, which extends from the mean low water line towards the coastal bank. So basically all of the flat area beyond the bank. Work within the tidal flat will be limited to removal of existing structures. There's various lift piers and piles that'll be cut down. We are meeting the performance standards of the tidal flat by not impacting the flow of the river. We're increasing the project's capacity for erosion control and storm damage, and we're protecting the habitat within the river. The coastal bank runs between the tidal flat and along the top of bank along the project shoreline. We are meeting performance standards for coastal bank, as Anders will describe further, by stabilizing the shoreline and protecting the downstream habitats. There's no structural work beyond the riprap stormwater outfalls and replacement of sheet pile walls, and no proposed work to endangered species habitats. I'm going to mention endangered species habitats a few times, but it's delineated based on the National Heritage Commission, and it's all without of our proposed limit of work, so we're not touching that at all. There's this area of salt marsh within the project property. This is just plants that like living in saline soils. We are not touching the salt marsh at all, and it will be protected during construction. And we won't be doing any work that will affect the habitats of the salt marsh or affect the sunlight that it receives. There are 2 areas of land containing shellfish within the tidal flats on the eastern and western portions of the tidal flats. And that area is only affected by the removal of the piers and pilings, which will be cut down to grade. We're meeting the performance standards of that by maintaining existing circulation and water patterns. We are not impacting the sediment surfaces or the type of sediment that reaches the shellfish, and we won't be affecting the habitat that contains the shellfish. The stormwater management treatment has been designed knowing that it was going to outlet to these areas. So we've designed it to provide the 1 inch of water quality treatment over the contributing impervious areas, so that the rain gardens and the porous pavement are sized for that. And the shoreline work will protect against erosion that doesn't exist in the current condition right now. It's really dilapidated. There's pavement peeling over the edge, which we'll see more of in a little bit. And then lastly, there's a fish run that's within the river, which will again only be impacted by removal of existing structures. We're meeting those performance standards by not impacting their runs or spawning or nursery habitats. We're not impacting the flow of the river. And again, we have no work within the endangered species habitat. And with that, I'll turn it over to our marine engineer to talk further.
Thank you, Katie. My name is Anders Bjørngard. I am a coastal engineer with GZA Geoenvironmental.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes, thank you. How's that? Yeah, Anders Bjørngard with GZA. So we have been asked to assist Redgate with stabilization of the coastline, as well as to provide some resiliency and vulnerability analysis and recommendations. One of the nice things about this site is that it's fairly protected from a coastal standpoint, and that has two primary benefits. It, number one, allows us to implement softer, nature-based solutions, which are favored by most people these days, including Coastal Zone Management, CZM, that was referred to earlier, Mass Coastal Zone Management, and they're charged with protection of coastal resources in the state. So that's one of the fortunate aspects of the location of the site. The other one is that because it's relatively sheltered, we don't have to do much in the intertidal zone. In fact, there's only two exceptions to that. The first one is that we're going to remove some dilapidated old structures at or below the mean high water line. And the second issue is that based on comments from the MEPA process from Division of Marine Fisheries, they've requested that in one area of the site here, let's see if I can get my bearings. Okay, so here's the salt marsh that Katie was talking about, right here. And they have asked that we have a vegetated slope coming down to the mean high water line. And they requested that we consider extending or planting salt marsh between the toe of that vegetated slope and the existing salt marsh. So we've incorporated that. But other than that, we're not doing anything in the intertidal zone. The concept for the stabilization is basically to flatten the existing slope to a 3-to-1, 3 horizontal to 1 vertical, and then plant it with native salt-tolerant species. And I don't know if it's going to be visible, but I can try to go through some of the different conditions on the shoreline. The camera may need to zoom in on this. But basically, the existing grade is close to 3-to-1 anyway, and we saw some pictures there, and if you've been by the site, you see that it's random rubble, asphalt, exposed urban fill that's exposed to the shoreline. And we're basically going to excavate that out as required to put in a planting medium. And then we're going to plant these native species, all of which, by the way, are on CZM's recommended planting list for environments like this, from the mean high water line up on a 3-to-1. And then beyond that, also in response to some of the comments from the MEPA permitting process, we've incorporated vegetative buffers to absorb energy from waves during storm conditions when storm surges bring the water level up to the top of the slope or close to it. So it's pretty simple, and like I said, we're very fortunate in this case to be able to use those soft solutions, vegetation, to allow a natural process to stabilize the shoreline.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just had a thought when you were talking about that. Do your calculations take into account a situation such as like we had on January 6th a couple of years ago when we had the king tide and a full moon at the same time?
Yes, they do. And you know, those, we believe it or not, we call those nuisance flooding events, although they are pretty severe sometimes. But we've also looked at 100-year events for current sea level conditions, as well as down the road in 2070 for those conditions as well. So we've looked at that full range. And generally speaking, we've, by raising the grade a little bit along the shoreline and then incorporating this vegetated slope, we've greatly improved the resiliency and the conditions along the shoreline and therefore protecting the ACEC. I think I'm going to pass on going through these details because they're hard to see and it's probably not all that relevant to you folks, but I'd rather just open it up to questions at the end of the presentation, which we may be at.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Before I give the public a chance to come up and ask some questions, I'll ask the members of the board if they have any questions. I have one, and this is for anyone who would like to answer this. There's a good degree of siltation that occurs on outflow and tides, not only Saugus River, but the Pines River. And I'm wondering what effect the riprap is going to have on the siltation process. Will it slow it down, keep it the same that it is, allow more buildup on the northern side of the project? Would somebody like to address that?
Yes, I can take that one. There is no significant new riprap on this site. We're taking advantage of some existing riprap that's out there now below the high tide line. Other than that, we have a little riprap at outfalls, but generally speaking, we're just using vegetation to stabilize the shoreline. There will be a little bit of sedimentation that over the years naturally occurs on that, and that, you know, frankly, is something that is considered a natural process, and it will not, you know, impact the ACEC. It's really returning it to a natural. A lot of habitat and downshore, downstream habitat benefits from a little bit of sedimentation. So there will be some, but basically the vegetation, once established, minimizes that. And until it's established, we've included some biodegradable fabrics and some augmented soils to minimize any erosion that might occur until the vegetation's healthy.
Thank you. Is there any member of the commission who'd like to ask some questions before I give the public an opportunity?
I don't know if it's so much of a question, but I think it's important, and I think, Liz, you have brought this up, that the boundary of the project does not include, sorry, yeah, thank you. The boundary of the project, I guess, stops at Gibson Park. So where the fence is at G&J Towing, that's the boundary of the project. There's no work being done past that in the fields at this time. The state's working on that, right?
That's correct.
And what's the timing on that, on their part of the project? Do you know?
I don't. I know the city, and maybe Frank could speak to this a little bit, but I know the city has been working on pulling together or identifying funding sources for the work. But I would not be best to speak to that. We are working on that edge condition between us and Gibson Park to make sure that it's seamless. As Katie mentioned, you know, there is a ditch right now there that currently the site drains a lot of water towards that ditch. And the way that we are redirecting stormwater, it's actually, there's less water. There will be less water going towards that ditch in the future condition. But I don't know, Frank, if you would like to speak.
Yes, that's good. Questions of good timing, because we just applied for MVP grant for resiliency improvements for Gibson Park in that northern part of the Riverside neighborhood. What's important to note, and we picked this up at site plan review, is that that boundary line between their property and Gibson Park is always a wet area, spongy area. So we want them to put together a design plan that will incorporate either bioswale or rain gardens in that area that will serve to retain that water and not have any further impact on the rest of the area of Gibson Park. As they said, their boardwalk will end at their property line. There'll be a public plaza area and viewing area there, but our plans are to continue that boardwalk southerly even elevated at points over points, parts of the marsh. It'll be restored. So it'll be an elevated boardwalk as it comes along the westerly side of Gibson Park towards the boatyard. And that's the plan and vision. There are funding sources out there, and we're exploring all of them, but right now we're concentrating on the flood protection and resiliency measures for the area. That's our predominant goal right now.
Thank you. I have one more question, and I'm not sure who best to ask. What would be the maintenance program going forward for the project? We had spoken about the sewage system. I believe that there was going to be some pumping. Do you have a maintenance plan? I'm sure you do. But I also want to make sure that a maintenance plan is going to be incorporated into any plans, documents, sale documents in perpetuity for this site. So we never have to worry about that.
I probably can't speak specifically to the sewage. I can say that as part of the Chapter 91 application, we are going to be including a maintenance plan, especially for the boardwalk.
I also mean catch basins and what, the
Yes,
mechanical
that is-
components of the project, Triton catch basin systems.
So I think Katie can best speak to that.
Yep, so our stormwater design, includes an operation and maintenance plan for all of the BMPs as well as the site. So that makes sure that within the rain gardens, debris is removed and they're raked and plants are well established and replaced as required. On paved surfaces, there will be periodic vacuum trucks that will clean the pavement. I think the plan is quarterly for that. But then in general, on the site, in landscaped areas or recreational spaces, there will be, bi-yearly or more, similar to the rain gardens, making sure that plants are well established, making sure everything is clean, making sure that excess debris isn't entering the stormwater system. We don't really have many actual catch basins on this project site, but there are components for cleaning anything like that. They'd be opened up and debris would be removed from them, pumped as required. And of course, the sewer system, the building relies on that for that to function well. So that will be maintained periodically as well to make sure that it continues to function efficiently.
Thank you.
Katie, when we went to the site, didn't you mention a holding system? Could you go over
did.
that?
So the sewer service for the building will be equipped with a pump station itself. This is separate from the municipal pump station. And that pump station is required for a few reasons. One is that to meet the elevations of the existing sewer main, we need to pump a little bit for the sewer to kind of be self-cleaning and to work well. But it'll also control the rate of sewer from the project site. So rather than, from the proposed units having the sewer flow by gravity, we're actually going to slow it down and pump it at a much slower and constant rate, which will really aid in the capacity of the downstream sewer mains.
What's the capacity of that holding system?
So it's kind of like a really large septic tank, if you can picture that. So it's a large concrete subsurface box. The dimensions of it, I believe, are 15 by 8. So it's a very big structure. And, there's pumps inside, so it fills up to a certain level, and then it gets pumped. But we've designed that carefully, anticipating the flow from the building as well as the capacity of the sewer mains.
And that's a closed system?
Correct, yeah.
Do you know what the capacity of the tank is? It is?
It's hard to say because we don't utilize the entire tank. It fills up to a certain level, then the pumps kick on, and then it.
But you're installing a tank. Is it going to be like 5,000 gallons, 10,000 gallons?
I know the dimensions of it. I think it's like perhaps 8 feet high by 8 feet wide by 14 or 15.
Well, it's probably in the documents, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else on the board like to ask any questions at this time? If not, then I'll open it up to any members of the audience who would like to speak. Yes, sir. Need your name and address, please?
Hi, Ron Clark, 98 Whitnap, Revere, Mass. I just got a few questions. Some of them you kind of hit on, but some of them are a little concerning to me. Number one, and seeing where you guys brought it up, was the, Frank Stringy brought it up, was that the fact that the pumping station on the Linway, from what I'm told right now, can't handle as much as one more toilet bowl. To do these things in tandem without having that plan complete just seems crazy to me, because from what I'm told, that plan has not even started. There's been nothing submitted. So I can't see this project even starting till that plan is moving forward. That's just because Frank brought it up. So I had a couple other questions, and I don't know how you want to handle it, but one thing is, Frank, again, brought up this thing as this whole master plan. And every picture we've seen is showing the boatyard and the G&J site and the Mirage site and everything. Currently, you don't own the other two sites. We don't know when that's going to happen. Is it 5 years, 10 years, 2 years away? So the question is, how does that really fit into this whole project? What kind of changes are we going to make to this property now that are going to drastically affect what happens going forward? The other thing you guys are talking about is this traffic plan. Again, there is no plan in effect as of today. You guys want to start building this thing, as she mentioned, this winter they want to start this thing. There's no traffic plan as of today. So right now, we got to assume they're going to be using the Linway with much more traffic coming in and out, especially if this thing gets built prior to this traffic design being complete. We don't even know the effect of the newest station. I mean, many of these drawings that I've seen really aren't proportional. If you really look at them close, they got trees and places that couldn't even possibly go there over near the Riverside area. The fire station that's currently being built, no, I don't know how that's going to affect this traffic plan they're coming up with. So those are some of my things. The other thing is Gibson Park. We're talking about building a storage. We're talking about building a storage tank there. I understand, I want to know, are these going to be separate? And are we going to guarantee that these are kept separate? The storm containment under Gibson Park is supposed to be for the residents, for the overflow of the water. Have nothing to do with this project.
I'm sorry.
Are we going to guarantee
what-
these are
A
separate?
storage tank is being built under Gibson Park?
Yeah, you don't,
By who?
by the city.
I've not heard anything about that, and that doesn't have anything to do with this project.
Well, when you talk about this as a whole big
Let's stay
project.
through the chair and through the podium, please. Not from the audience. Thank you.
Okay, well, Frank can maybe clear that up. Maybe I'm wrong. I go on a lot of stuff here that, you know, people are telling me and things I hear because it's hard to get any information.
Well, what we're talking about doing here, we're talking about the stormwater portion of the project and.
And I wanna make sure,
The
because-
utility portion of the project. This isn't something for the planning department or anything like that. This is
Okay.
stormwater management. It's not a town hall meeting.
Okay, that's fine. But again, I'm just concerned that the two things are kept separate. So what is the actual, I hear him keep talking about this storm runoff plan and everything, and, you know, has that been verified through the DEP? That's one of my questions. From what I understand, they're the governing body of the storm runoff. And is that plan official and complete? We don't know these things as being outsiders looking in. We can't tell. All we can tell is what people tell us. Currently, if I go down into that site right now, there's a big hose sticking out in the middle of the street, right as you come off the Linway. That's where G&J pumps their water. Obviously, we'd love to see some improvement there. We don't want to see that water being pumped out there. But from what I understand, we're not changing the grade of this property. So is that really going to be corrected, or are we going to still have a hose pumping water out into the middle of the street? What's the guarantee that's going to end? And where's that water going to go? Again, you guys talked about the 100-year storm and everything, but, you know, are you the expert? That's my question. Who's the expert that guarantees this?
Well, Mr. Clark, maybe I should afford them an opportunity to answer some of these questions before you go any further.
Okay.
Would somebody from the development, Katie, would you like to address some of these issues that are being brought up?
I can certainly speak to the stormwater portion, and we've heard a lot of concern. We've heard a lot of concerns from the neighborhood about stormwater impacts to the park, to the off-ramps, to the abutting properties, and that's something that we considered really carefully when designing the stormwater system for this site. All of the stormwater from the project site is going to 3 new outfalls along the north side of the project property. So those are 3 new piped outlets for stormwater that will enter into the river. This project site has been graded so that we will be collecting all of the stormwater within the proposed stormwater management system, including the area that runs along the off-ramps and the park. I know I've seen that pipe as well now, and there won't be a need to pump into the off-ramps in the proposed condition. That wouldn't be allowed, and that's not part of our design. Our system is adequately designed to convey all of the stormwater from the project site to the north, not to the park, not to the off-ramps, and not to the surrounding properties.
And the other issue, Mr. Stringy, would you like to address that? As far as the timeline is concerned and whether anything could go forward without the pumping system being improved?
Yeah, yes, sir. So the other elements of the master plan, which are totally separate from this development, that the city is seeking funding for, the acquisition of the boatyard, we've negotiated with the property owner a price to acquire that land. The city council very shortly will be, a taking order will be issued to the city council very shortly for the taking of that property. So that's happening soon. Once that happens, we're already lined up to submit an application with the Massachusetts Economic Seaport Council for improvements of the pier and bulkhead abutting that property for a community rowing program, and then restoration of the building. So these are all things in the process right now. Like I mentioned, we just filed for an MVP grant for the resiliency improvements for the Gibson Park, that element of it. The roundabout, which is an important feature of this whole project that connects everything together, is the city is seeking state funds through the TIP program and MassWorks program for that. We'll be very shortly submitting 25% design plans to Mass DOT for those improvements. So everything right now is moving forward. I can't tell you exactly what the timeline of all these improvements will be, but they are in action right now. What else? The fire station, as we all know, is all set for demolition very shortly, and construction will probably commence probably in March or April for that new station. Other than that, the other infrastructure improvements that we spoke about are the developer's responsibility in terms of the improvements to the pump station, sewer pump station, and water line improvements. And they will not be, they will not be issued a sewer connection permit for this project or water connection for this project until that plan is approved and in action. So this project is not going anywhere, and the developer understands that and is committed to doing those improvements until those improvements are undertaken.
Thank you.
I think, just one thing on your question about the DEP, there's a file number, a DEP file number. They've been working very closely with the DEPs, just so you're okay with that.
We can get a copy of that.
Yes.
I'd just like to respond to your last question there, and I don't like to refer to myself as an expert, but I do have the utmost confidence in the work that my firm does, and I'd put it up against anyone. But as far as experts go, CZM, again, has extensively reviewed our work. DEP has extensively reviewed our work. So it's not like we're just putting it out there. It has been reviewed by, if you'd like to call them experts, I don't. DEP and CZM. It's public as part of the MEPA process. their questions and our responses.
Thank you. Are you all set? Okay.
I'll be quick, promise to be quick. The, let me see right now. Okay, so we answered about that. The existing pilings, you're talking about removing what's existing, which I'm very happy about.
What was that?
Oh, sorry. Removing the existing pilings, I'm very happy. That was one of my questions, because eventually they're going to fall out. We don't want them washing up on our beaches, and also we don't want them hitting our boats. I'm a boater, and I belong to the yacht club, and I don't want them things bouncing off my boat. But don't you have to have Army Corps permission to remove that? Have you started that process? Sometimes that can be kind of timely, so that gets out to be a long time. And then you're also talking about that pier. I guess you guys are going to own that pier that exists? Okay, well, right now, that thing's about 50% falling apart at least, right? And it's definitely a navigation hazard as of today. So if you haven't started with the Army Corps working on that, that's going to be quite timely. I know from dealing with the Army Corps previous that that's quite a long time. So hopefully you guys will get right involved with that, and hopefully, you know, the Army Corps needs to have the file number and everything like that. Just going back to your question about the maintenance, this is going to have oil separators from what I understand on the outflow, right? And going back to her question, what is the maintenance plan for that? You know, because if they're not maintained, obviously they'll be quite useless in a short period of time. I've heard rumor that some of the other buildings are already been delinquent. I don't know, it's just rumor. But, you know, it needs to be verified how often it's going to be done, and that it is done, because I've heard already that there's been delinquencies. So that it's useless to, you know, next thing you know, people will be looking at the yacht club saying, we're dumping stuff in there. We talked about the road, we talked about the pilings, and that's it. The pilings that they're driving. You had mentioned earlier that this was supposed to be a winter time frame. From what I understand, the piling depth has gone considerably deeper than what was originally planned, upwards of somewhere around 130 feet. I don't know what that does to your time frame. And, you know, the residents there, when I first talked to Damien during one of those hearings, or meetings, or whatever you want to call them, he said this would be done during the winter months. Is that still the plan? Because, you know, in the summertime, I'm living on my boat, and, you know, people in the Pines have their windows open in the spring and everything, and, you know, are we going to be listening to these pilings smashing late into the summer? You know, what is the plan there? And that's all I got, so thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to, yeah, please.
Just to respond to some of those questions, so we are going to be filing for an Army Corps general permit soon. We're preparing that application as we speak. We do understand that we are going to need to address the pilings right now, and we are planning to cut them down below the mud line. The pilings on the site, we are working with McPhail Associates as our geotechnical engineer, and it is very soft soils here. So we are doing deep pilings, roughly 100 to 110 feet deep. I don't know exactly the timing of how long it will take. Hopefully we can start that work in this winter time. I will say that McPhail has confirmed that the vibrations from the pilings are not felt within any more than 100 feet of the pilings, and right now the closest residential or residences are 600 and 900 feet for both Point of Pines and Riverside. So I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know about the noise. That's something we can look into for sure.
Are there requirements on the noise levels?
I mean, we will be complying with the City of Revere noise ordinance, but I will double check with McPhail on what's expected in terms of noise from these pilings.
Question, if you don't mind. Is there any way, I don't know, maybe through the building department or whatever, that this could be limited?
You have to come up to the thing.
In regards, and maybe this is for Frank or something, but in regards to the building and the building permits, is there any way we can limit this to weekdays and not weekends for the pile driving and that kind of stuff? I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah,
or not.
that's,
I don't even know if that's here or
yeah,
there.
that's out of the scope of this commission, but maybe, Frank, would you like to address that?
obviously, we'd like to see this project completed as fast as possible, and, delaying it only increases the area, in terms of receiving, noise and whatever other impacts result from the construction. So, right now, under the ordinance, no construction is supposed to start before 8 a.m. However, the police chief can grant special permission to start earlier than that, including on weekends. So that would be up to the police chief as well as the building inspector to approve those hours.
Thank you. Now, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Council Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I'll be very brief. My concern here this evening is to make positively sure that there is a good stormwater management plan for that project. As you all know, the pump station down on the Linway, up until 2012, I was getting calls constantly from people in the Point of Pines about flooding, toilets overflowing, all types of flooding. And I was fortunate enough to prevail upon former Mayor Tom Ambrosino to come up with $1 million to rebuild that pump station. And that pump station today, I haven't had one single call with regard to that pump station malfunctioning. There is going to be a second wet well put in, and that will be specifically to handle all of the extra drainage, sewerage coming from that project. Right now, I heard comments about a water line. They're going to loop that water line. It's either, I think, an 8 or a 10-inch water line that will make the water not only flow more smoothly, but also give us better water pressure for the hydrant system in the Point of Pines and on Riverside. We have a plan right now to run a line. We just went under North Shore Road at Alice Street and Vera Street down on the Oak Island section. And that is going to go out under the B&M tracks, but it's also, which is important to Riverside, going to apply more water to that area in the event that the water line under John Avenue should break down. We wouldn't have to wait to, stop traffic and everything else. We'd have that secondary line. The other thing, too, is, and I'm sure we all remember, anyone that's lived in the Point of Pines, or really any part of Revere, there have been several attempts to to allow building 40 units, 50 units, 72 units down on the Riverside Boatyard site, which is comprised of 50,000 square feet. On each of those occasions, I stood up and fought for the residents down there to defeat building. The last thing I did down there was amend the zoning. All you can put down there now are 3 single-family homes, because in the LI district, you need 15,000 square feet to build one home. It's a 50,000 square foot site, so we can all do the math. Right now, we've just about reached a negotiation with the owner to purchase that site. Once we purchase that site, or once we submit it to the council, it'll be up to the council then to appropriate the money to purchase the site. We've got money in free cash. We just got $30 million from the feds. The money's there. There's no question about it. To allow anyone down the road to change the zoning and build on that site would be just ridiculous, because it would do nothing but harm the Riverside area and perhaps even the entire Point of Pines. So, again, my primary concern here tonight is to make sure that we address the flooding. There are going to be storage areas under Gibson Park to hold some of that water while the flooding, while the high tides are going on, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, my main concern tonight is to make sure that this honorable body also make sure that the stormwater management plan is in place and all of the other places that could be a potential to cause flooding. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Hey, how are you? No pictures.
Yes, sir. Name and address.
My name is Albert Fiore. I reside at 350 Revere Beach Boulevard. I've been a resident in this city for over 40 years. And it never ceased to amaze me what's before us. Now, Mr. Chairman, first let me recognize Commissioner Raponi, who's long served us well in this city. Ms. Lugier, I'm sorry, Natalie, I didn't catch your first name, your last name. Okay, and welcome, and I think one of our newest members, Mr. Visconti. It's really nice to see younger people involved. So I rise this evening, Mr. Chairman. 20 years ago, I sat in that very seat as a city council president to this great community of Revere. I vowed never at that time, ever, to do anything to anybody's neighborhood that I could not live with myself. Now, we understand the commission's role, or at least I think I understand it. I know you're good, honorable people, and I'm certainly not an expert on environmental issues. And I'm confident that each of you will act within the letter of the law with respect to the environment and wetland issues. But 291 units, rental units, it's unconscionable. It's, rental units. I'm concerned about the bigger picture, and I know this doesn't apply to members of this body, but as a resident, concerned about the residents, frankly the residents, not the out-of-town developers that have been around this city for the last several years. And I think the people of the community have had enough, certainly not any reflection on the good work that you folks do. I'm concerned about the negative impact of the people of the Riverside, the Point of Pines, the Boulevard, Oak Island, where I grew up, Lower Revere Street. As you know, we have many young and new families in this city. Great beach community, coupled with, I'll be brief, I'll wrap it up, coupled with the, those of us that seen it all in the city. And I know Mr. Laval, Ms. Raponi, you've seen it all. Mr. Powers, you've seen it all. Mr. Stringy, an old pal from years ago, you've seen it all. Christina, Angela, you've seen it all. We've got the young accessory boys here that are very concerned about what's going to happen in this community. Chappie, you've seen it all. Mr. Clark, you've seen it all. So without going too far into this, I ask each of you to remember the blizzard of '78. And we all remember it. Mr. Laval, you do, my science teacher. We lived in shelters. Some of us lived at Revere High School for several weeks. Thank God for the late Joey Mulcahy that carried me out on his shoulders and went back for my parents in a canoe and a 2-year-old baby. Who, the late Joe Mulcahy, probably one of the finest residents to come through this community in my lifetime anyway. But, you know, we muscled through it. We came back. We persevered, only to come back to substandard repairs by HUD. And, those of you, you research this. You may see it, every year you'll see our good friend Chief Doherty in February on TV, pulling people out of the homes. But I don't want to get too far off the topic, but we've come back. The Graffs, the Demoris, the Kearys, people lived on that boulevard for I'm not going to say a million years, I'd be exaggerating, but 50 years, 80 years, coupled with the new residents. They put their lives back together. They pulled their bootstraps, and here we are today. So I direct these remarks at City Hall, not to this commission. When is enough enough, I ask? When is enough enough? When is enough parking problems? When is enough traffic enough? I know you'll stand by our side, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I know you'll help put a stop to the political charades, shenanigans, and half-truths and double talks that we've been listening to this city for far too long. And I'm going to comment on one last thing. The city planner, who's a great man, served this city well, but he mentioned the fire station. So let's talk about the fire station. 1991, Mayor Colella, a fine mayor, closed the fire station. As a young city council, I voted 3 times to open that fire station. Mayor Haas kept it closed. 20 years ago, we were talking about opening a fire station. I don't have to tell any of you that 2 years ago, they gave us a picture of a fire station. A picture of a fire station. Now, here we are, 5 weeks before an election, and we have not only a picture, they're removing asbestos from the building. I'm sure there are plans, but I ask on what's the time frame on those plans? You know, it's just pretty funny, the progression of this. How long does it take to build a fire station? So I say enough with the shenanigans, enough with the charades, and enough with the double talk. And I thank you for standing by our side, Mr. Chairman, and members of this honorable commission.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Christina Cousins-Nappy. I live at 47 Chamberlain Avenue. I have lived in the Point of Pines 53 years. I have family that lives in the Pines. We have 3 properties together. We talk about stormwater. I am a victim of the blizzard of '78. We lost our home to fire because apparatus could not get down to the street. I have lived through the no-name storm. I have lived through just passing by storms that we get water. The Point of Pines right now is dealing with very repressed seawalls that nobody seems to take credit for, not the Army Corps of Engineers nor the city. So we have a wall that is deteriorating, and then you have issues on Riverside with the flooding, and you want to put 291 apartments on a repressed area. I just don't understand it. Stormwater, if you want to know about stormwater, I can tell you about stormwater. And to put 291 units, we don't even know if that land will even hold 291 units. And where does all the stormwater go? It goes over to Riverside, or it'll go over to Point of Pines. And then you want to build that property up. And then where does that water go again? Down the Point of Pines or into Riverside? So until some problems are fixed down there, I think that we're way off on this project. There's too many what-ifs, and that's just my point of view.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before we go any further, let me just clarify something for the people in the audience and for us members on the board. We're all residents of this city, and as residents, we might not like the parking problems, the traffic, many of the other problems that are ensuing on the city from a lot of building. But as conservation commissions, we are relegated to only some aspects of this project and not some of the other valid issues that should be addressed. So I just wanted to clarify that for the people. Mr. Powers, you want to add one more thing quickly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just heard comments made about the fire station, and I understand that's not part of this meeting this evening, and I didn't bring it up. Let's have a little decorum here, please.
Please, nothing from the audience, just the podium.
2 years ago, July 31st, 2019, I was successful in getting $9.2 million bond authorization through the City Council because my colleagues, as I did, recognized the need to get something done down there. It was an isolated area. North Shore Road, the Linway were being over-flooded. It was a very difficult area to get to. And I hear questions raised about why the fire station isn't built. Well, first of all, let's keep in mind, we had a pandemic in the city. And may I please do without the remarks? We had a pandemic in the city, and our firefighters were very much involved in that, helping our citizens. When we went in there and finally broke ground for the demo, we found an oil tank in there. Took us 45 days because it had to go, the earth had to go to DEP to be looked at, examined. That station is being built, okay? All I hear from the naysayers is perhaps they wouldn't even like to see it built. I don't know. It seems to me that way tonight. But that station is going to be built. They're doing the asbestos in there, and that's going to take probably another 2 or 3 weeks. And at that point, you'll see that station demoed. You need that station down there. You couldn't just rebuild it because you needed to be able to get a ladder or a tower unit in there, whichever was the chief's choice. The chief recommended, the deputies recommended it, and I'm very proud to have been successful in getting the money appropriated for that station. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Anyone else? Somebody new? Yes, sir.
Good evening, members of the commission. Robert Maurer, 229 Rice Avenue. This is a good project, and I trust that this commission will maintain its focus on the commission's responsibility: wetlands protection, stormwater management. This project, the way it's designed, and the way it is shown in the plans, and the way it has been explained by the people who have created it, not only protects wetlands and manages stormwater, it improves the area. It improves stormwater management, it improves wetlands protection. And an overarching benefit to the project as a whole, not only just the building that's before you tonight, but the project as a whole that Frank has alluded to with the improvements to Gibson Park and the Thayer Street Boatyard. This is a good project that will have substantial benefit not only to the Riverside and the Point of Pines, but to the city of Revere itself. Keep in mind that what this project ultimately replaces is essentially a junkyard that has environmental detriment, visual detriment, which we, I think, all see, and also does nothing to enhance the stature of this city as people drive into the city of Revere from the north. So I hope I trust that you'll keep your eye on the ball of stormwater management and wetlands protection, which this project does, but also as underscoring all of that is the overall benefit that this project brings to the city. The city council recognized that when it voted to approve it. The design review board that went through 6 different meetings with the developer and had a very thorough and transparent process during last fall into the winter. Everyone recognized that, and that's why we're here tonight. The project is a good one. I hope you'll approve it.
Thank you. We're running late, and we have a full agenda. If there's anybody else who has not spoken, would like to address, other than that, I'm going to.
I think
Ma'am.
we're done with the, with the election stuff.
Is she waving, or
Candidate.
did you want to speak, ma'am? Yes. Come right up.
Do you have stormwater questions?
Yeah. My name's Donna Calcimetto. I live at 600 Revere Beach Boulevard. The stormwater situation on the boulevard has gotten so much worse since all these new units were built. I can't fathom we're going to have another 300 units about 4 doors away from my house. With the rain that we had in July, unprecedented, again, water coming up, again, the sewage problems. And every single time I hear everyone talk about all of this conservation, sewage and waste, and the wetland behind my house, that beautiful Rumney marsh that's never been cleaned up or taken care of. I wonder why people forget the obvious things before we get into a bigger program of more and more construction and choking off the beach. I don't see how that's conservation. There's pollution, there's damage, and it's a disgrace. I live here and I love my house, and I'm disgusted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's about it. What is the will of the commission? Any motions from the floor?
I've gone through the walkthrough. I did the site visit. I live there, so I sympathize with my neighbors' concerns about the community. I think we've gone a little off topic with the whole campaign speech part of this meeting. But what we're focused on here is just the area of concern. This one parcel here, or few parcels, but basically the G&J towing project. The G&J towing project right now is asphalt. It's asphalt surface, and we're draining water, or, through a pipe, like somebody said, onto a roadway. These guys are proposing to increase drainage on that site, increase the coastal wetlands. They're proposing new plantings. They're proposing public spaces. They're trying to improve this site. I've seen the engineering. I've read the documentation. I think these guys have done a really good job, the homework. They've dealt with the DEP, Army Corps. They're working with the Army Corps. They've worked with the state. Anything outside of this project is the state and the city's responsibility. We don't have control over that right now. I don't see any reason not to approve this the way it's presented. I mean, I'm going to make a motion to approve.
First, we'll need a motion to close the hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so the hearing is closed. Now, Heather, would you like to make that motion again, please?
I'm going to make a motion to approve as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
All right, so there is a motion to issue an order of conditions on the plans that have been presented to us. We'd like to take a vote, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, then the order of conditions is approved. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 548, 580 Revere Beach Boulevard. Is someone here for that project? Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Tim Alexander, representing Mill Creek Residential, the developer and the proponent of the project 548 to 580 Revere Beach Boulevard. I'm joined by Rick Salvo, a civil engineer from Engineering Alliance, as well as Mitch Mislanka, who's a wetlands.
Before we go any further, could we please clear? A little too much discussion back there. And also, do you have a file number, sir?
We do, yes.
Heather, file? Go ahead.
Can I read the file number? It's 061-0766. Sure, it's Tim Alexander.
Did you say 066?
0766. I can read it.
Thank you.
I got that.
Okay, thank
Get
you.
it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sure. So, again, Rick Salvo, civil engineer from Engineering Alliance. Mitch Mislanka from Goddard Consulting, Wetland Engineering, here to answer questions as well. Just a brief introduction from my part. Mill Creek is a national multifamily residential developer with a strong local presence. We're very excited and encouraged by to be in Revere and the conversations we've had thus far with staff and the city. Our proposal is for a multifamily apartment residential building. You can see the site in the yellow outline next to me. We have had multiple meetings and exchanges with city planning staff and other folks within the city over the past few months for our proposal. Just to point out, this is in the RC1 zoning district, and our proposal is to create a by right project that follows all local zoning ordinances, both in terms of setbacks, parking requirements, obviously building height, and other zoning code. So, like I said, we've had multiple meetings with the city. Most recently, a site plan review committee meeting last week, where we went through general discussion and questions. I think the building footprint, parking requirements have all been met. We're working through other items, traffic study, et cetera. But here tonight, obviously, we're here to talk about a little bit more on the engineering side and wetlands as needed. So I can pass it over to Rick Salvo for a little bit more in-depth information on the project, and happy to answer any questions following that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, office at 194 Central Street, Saugus, Mass. It's good to be back here in person in front of you all. As Tim mentioned, this particular parcel of land, a lot of folks know as the Lasden estate. Mr. Lasden's house existed right up here on the north end of the property. It's comprised of about 13 assessors map parcels that total 131,676 square feet. There's also 3 parcels of land in the back southwest corner that were owned by the Mongello family that was also added into this assemblage to total about the 3-acre parcel that you see before you. This parcel was before this commission, I think it was about a little less than a year ago, for an order of resource area delineation, where we were issued an order that identified a salt marsh off-site to the back with a 100-foot buffer zone that extends onto the property. It identified the limit of the 100-year floodplain, which is elevation 11, which is also known as the resource area land subject to coastal storm flowage. And there's also a coastal dune across the street at the limit of Revere Beach, which is also off-site, which has a buffer zone that extends onto the project. So the only resource areas that are on the site physically is land subject to coastal storm flowage, with some buffer zones for the off-site resource areas. Similar to most parcels on this end of the boulevard, the topography sort of grades in east to west direction, the boulevard being the highest point of the site in and about elevation 15 or so, with grades in the back about elevation 5 or 6 as you head towards the narrow gauge railroad right-of-way. The proposal for this site, as Tim had mentioned, is a multifamily apartment building that's been designed so as to meet all of the zoning criteria. This project will not go before the Board of Appeals, as it is a completely by right project. As you know, this zoning district allows heights up to 120 feet. This will be higher than the 70-foot threshold, so will be considered a high rise by building code standards. It'll be in the range of about 87 feet high. It will contain about 360 units with 570 parking spaces, which is what the zoning requires. There'll be a two-way access driveway to the south, right up against the beach house, which is the abutter directly to the south, right here. So access to the site will be via a two-way driveway here. There'll be an entrance to the garage on the south end, which will get you into the street level, and also an interior ramp to get you to an upper level of podium. And then similar to most of the other buildings that are built along the boulevard, You'll travel around the rear of the property and be able to enter into a lower level garage at or about elevation 4. We've also provided for a one-way access to get around the building, and that will be for deliveries and that sort of thing. The residents will be basically encouraged to enter through the full access driveway and enter and exit the south end of the property. But we do have an access that goes all the way around the building. Again, trash pickup, deliveries, fire department access, and that sort of thing. While the zoning stuff really isn't the subject of the Wetlands Protection Act or the purview of this commission, I think it's just important to note how it fits into the zoning criteria. Utility connections will be made to the existing 10-inch water line that's in Revere Beach Boulevard. Gas services will be connected there as well. Transformer will be located up in this area here outside of the 100-year floodplain. Stormwater and the sewer line, as this commission knows, the sewer line runs down the middle of these parcels. It did on the beach house, and it does on this property, and it did through many of the properties along the boulevard. This site did receive an order of conditions a few years ago to relocate that sewer main. We're showing the same configuration here. The sewer shown in red will be relocated along the rear property line and reconnected back to its point at the north end so that it would be outside of the building footprint and have easy access from the DPW. That line will be upgraded from a 15-inch line to an 18-inch line, similar as what was done on other parts of the boulevard. In terms of stormwater management, there's 560 linear feet of 66-inch perforated pipe that'll be installed along the whole frontage of the property. That 66-inch pipe has been sized to handle the 100-year storm event to mitigate all of the roof runoff from this site. So the pipe will store that runoff, allow it to infiltrate right back into the ground, just like it does today, right? When it rains today, the raindrops land on that property and it infiltrates into the ground. Once the building roof is there, it prevents that from happening. So those roof leaders will be directed into that pipe. It will recharge the groundwater and put it right back into the ground just like it does today. And that will also handle runoff from the tops of the driveway, which are equipped with 2 sets of deep sump catch basins with hooded outlets that will discharge into a water quality unit prior to discharging into that infiltration facility. The rear of the property will be comprised of a pervious pavement solution. Given the low elevation down there, there's really not a lot of opportunity to put in structural BMPs, so a low impact design measure of a pervious solution that will handle basically just the runoff from the high point of the driveway down here and from about here back, as well as the pervious pavement itself. So it all results in net improvements in stormwater runoff. There's quite a bit more storage there, as there are no stormwater controls now because there's really nothing there now. But those voids will serve to store the stormwater and allow it to slowly percolate it back into the ground where it always went. So the surrounding area doesn't realize a difference that there's impervious surfaces constructed around it. That's essentially the layout of the property. Again, the DEP did issue the file number. They have not issued any technical comments yet. Just to read it off again, it's 061-0766. That must have been recently issued today because I didn't see it there yesterday, but I did jump on the website before coming here today. I think, in terms of an overview, I think I'll stop there and I'll turn it back to the commission. Because this is a by right project, this is really the only public hearing that will exist for this particular project site. If this wasn't within the Wetland Protection Act purview, that there wouldn't be a public hearing per se for this. We're not looking for any zoning relief. We're not looking for any special permits from the city council. So this is really the only public hearing. I will also note this is our second stop in the overall process here. We've obviously been to site plan review Now we're here before you, the local commission. From here, we will go into the MEPA process, where we'll undergo a full environmental review, as the state permit that's required for this project is obviously a DCR access permit, where this is a DCR roadway. So I guess with that, I'll turn it back to the commission for any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and I recall now when we walked the site, and I remember asking you something, I'm going to ask you again.
Sure.
That, changing that sewer pipe and going around the building, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. Now, and again, I don't know if you've cleared this with the sewer department or whatever agency it is, but does that present a problem, having those right-angle turns to go around the building?
So, and great question. So there are no right-angle turns. There are 45-degree bends. That was a specific comment that we got from the engineering department. Our initial design, when we first submitted it, did have some 90-degree bends in it. When the City of Revere Engineering and DPW performed their review, their comment was to eliminate those 90-degree bends, put in 45 degrees bends at the, with manholes to allow for that.
That's at both ends?
No, because this is the beach house property over here. So this end of the sewer was already relocated to the rear of the property. So it goes straight from here, and then at 45's right here to get back online because the sewer is up here. So on this end of the property, the sewer's already been relocated to the rear off-site for the beach house property. The only 45-degree bend is right here to get back online as we head north.
And one other question, having to do with the parking and the elevation. Is the parking below the 100-year flood?
There is parking below the 100-year flood. As you know, in the FEMA guidance and the FEMA regulations, a lowest first floor is allowed, I shouldn't say a lowest first floor, excuse me. You're allowed to have parking, storage, and building access below the 100-year floodplain. And so long as it's parking, building access, or storage, it's not considered a lowest first floor. So the lowest first floor in this case would be the street level, which is about 2 feet higher than the 100-year floodplain.
Just to clarify then, that none of the units, the residential units, will be below.
None of the units will be
What
in
will
the...
the elevation be at the first level of occupancy?
Is elevation 14.
And that would be how much above the floodplain?
3 feet above the
3 feet.
floodplain. So the first level of parking will be outside the floodplain. The second level of parking will be outside of the floodplain. The lower level of parking will be within the 100-year floodplain.
And it's also open,
And it's also
so
open.
there's no compensatory storage necessary?
That's correct. It would flow in and flow right back out again.
Anybody else on the board like to ask a question? Now's your chance.
What exactly, are you looking for approval from us, or are you going to go through those other agencies and then come back?
No, we're looking to have an order of conditions from this agency and then spend the practice of other projects that we've done on the beach that we would include that order of conditions with our MEPA filing.
That's a lot of units, that's a lot of area, a lot of water being directed out into the catch basins, and I'm just not real familiar with that site. I feel like I missed a walkthrough or something on that.
We did a walkthrough on this a long time ago for the sewer relocation. I don't think that there's been a walkthrough that's occurred yet for this particular project. So I don't know what catch basins you're talking about. We're not directing any stormwater back out towards the boulevard. All the stormwater that's generated for this site gets managed on the property and is directed towards the rear. There's no flow that's going out into the municipal drainage system.
Okay. Would it be possible to just come back to this at the next meeting, maybe meet on site and take another look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're fine with having a site visit.
Well, in that case, I have one more question too. Are we having pilings here, a spread foundation?
answer that. So, sorry, the question was about structural foundations. The conceptual plan at this point is to have a certain amount of ground improvements, mostly on the southern section of the site. Actually, as the site goes north, the geotechnical characteristics improve and could potentially have some spread foundations there. Could be a mixture, but certainly contemplating some ground improvements as needed, similar to the beach house next door.
Thank you. Oh, one more question. Is there a setback from the street for where the building actually goes up?
Yes.
Or is it right to the curb like some of the other projects?
No, as part of the zoning, it's a 20-foot setback from property line to building face. There is one very small section of the sort of lobby amenity area, which is allowed per the code to be within the setback as long as it's below 20 feet in height and has a certain percentage of glazing in that area in the building. And you can see, I'm sorry, I can't zoom in, but it's just a very small notch at this
Yeah, I
stage.
can see that little jog out there.
Yeah.
Well, since we have two members of the board that have never seen this property, I would feel more comfortable continuing this hearing until the next meeting in September, and also do a site visit prior to that, so we could go over the site and feel more comfortable with it. I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
I have a question.
Oh, all right, go ahead, Ann.
Are you providing enough parking spaces for the tenants? I didn't hear the number
Yes.
of spaces that you're providing. Are there
Yes.
adequate numbers to accommodate all tenants?
Yes, appreciate the question. Yes, we are. So first of all, we all are following the zoning ordinance in terms of parking requirements. It would be 570 total parking spaces for the 360 residential units proposed. And quite frankly, from what we know anecdotally up and down the other like projects on the beach, it could ultimately be certainly ample parking for the use that's proposed.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anyone else? No? Well, then, Mr. Fury, would you like to speak?
Give me a minute, I promise I'll be, so again, Albert Fiore, 350 Boulevard, proud resident of Revere Beach. Again, I trust, I rise in opposition to the project. Obviously, it's not your issue. Appreciate the members taking notes and paying close attention to everything everybody's had to say. And I appreciate you continuing the hearing so more residents will have an opportunity to speak. As far as notice, who gets notified?
The abutters, and it's within 100 feet of the property on all sides.
So that's what's concerning. I understand what the ordinance or laws are. Is there any way that people generally on the beach and the Pines could be notified, Riverside, lower Revere Street area that are affected by this?
Well, like I said, our regulations are only 100 feet from the property line.
Okay. So we'll get the word out. So generally speaking, I appreciate the work that you do. I know you follow the letter of the law and all the environmental issues that we face with all this development. I think...
Excuse me, it's also posted in the paper, too.
Okay, thank you. No, and I wasn't questioning anything like that, Mr. LaValle. You're my science teacher. I know you know more about the environment than I could ever imagine. But just, there should have been, a lot of foresight on the city's behalf. Before all this building was done 10, 20 years ago, we should have had a fire station. We should have had not a picture of a fire station. Now, I know that doesn't apply to you, and I'll cut it brief. The environmental issues that apply to all of us at the beach, the keeping the beach clean and keeping the seaweed cleaned up off the beach, and the issues with the beach wall and that type of stuff. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all the service that you've given us, Ms. Raponi, over the years, Ms. Legier, and Natalie and Zach. I can't remember last names all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yes, sir.
My name is Alan Graff. I'm abutting this property. She goes up to 580 Boulevard.
I'm sorry,
Hold
can
on,
you say your name?
would you repeat that again, please, sir?
Say your name and your address again?
Oh, Alan Graff, 582 Boulevard. Can you tell me how many story building this is?
Mr. Chairman, it's a 7-story building.
So that means you gotta do steel, right?
Hi,
to
speak
do
right into the
steel?
mic so we can all hear.
Does it have to be steel now? No wood? 7 stories?
7 stories?
Have to
But
be
see, I don't know
steel.
if that pertains to this particular,
I'm happy to answer the question.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So per the state building code, it's 5 stories of wood frame construction over a podium of concrete and steel. So it'd be a wood frame building. over
So wood
concrete
frame, wood
steel.
frame.
Correct.
All right. Now, how close is that going to come to my property at 582? I couldn't hear a lot of things you said.
Would you please repeat the question into the
Yeah.
microphone,
I
sir?
want to know how close it's going to be to my property. I live at 582 Boulevard.
Thank you.
Okay.
So it's about 24 and a half feet to the property line.
So that's all I got. So you're going to overhang my house, correct?
No.
When you go up high, the sun is not going to be blocked out? The sun wouldn't be blocked out?
The building won't be any closer than 24 feet to the property line.
Oh, high. The height,
About 6 feet, about 6 stories above the boulevard.
so what is that going to be, about 14 feet per building, per floor?
No, not that much.
How much? You don't know. All right, right now. All right, I got another question. For the sewer, are you guys putting in, I couldn't hear when you were talking about the sewer. You putting in, running a new sewer line? What size?
18-inch.
To going into what? On our side of the property. You're going to be 18. What about the people on from 582 down? What size sewer line we have there?
I believe it's a 15.
So how can you go from an 18 to a 15?
That's-
For flow-wise?
It's 15 now. The city has required us to upgrade it to an 18 on our property.
Your property, but what about our property? You're saying it's only 15 inches.
That's correct.
So how can you go from an 18-inch flow into a 15-inch pipe?
As
You
long-
can't do that.
You can, because it's a 15-inch pipe right now.
But you're going to put in an 18-inch pipe to carry the flow. So how can you carry a flow to 15 inches if you got an 18-inch pipe, which is a bigger pipe, going into a smaller pipe? So how are you going to take the capacity? You can't.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can answer that.
Excuse me,
question.
sir. Look, give him a chance to answer
go
that
ahead.
question.
So it's a 15-inch pipe
Can,
now.
excuse me, can
Use the
you
mic.
step away from the podium while he's answering? Thanks.
So, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. It's currently a 15-inch pipe now. There is enough capacity in that pipe to handle this development. The city, in terms of a planning practice for the projects that are upstream for this, has required developments to upgrade that pipe from a 15-inch pipe to an 18-inch pipe to plan for the future. We're continuing that practice down at their request. There would be enough capacity in this line to continue just the 15-inch. The engineering department has required us to upsize it to an 18-inch pipe, and that's what we've done.
So is
So
the
if you're
flow
gonna-
coming from his direction to your direction?
No, it flows towards Point of Pines.
Oh, okay.
Down to the pumping station.
I
It's
see.
not going to take the capacity. And
You know-
then, if you're building down at the boatyard, how's a pumping station going to take the boatyard in his property?
Right.
Impossible, from an engineering standpoint.
I agree.
I'm a chemist, so, I know what's going on here because I was in the water treatment business. All right, so I know what happens when you don't have the capacity, you're going to flood.
Yeah.
Now, you say down the road, they're going to increase the 15-inch. Then that means every house on the boulevard, they're going to dig up the yard and put up an 18-inch pipe, right? That's what they're saying down the road. You don't know that, but you just,
Right. But you know what? We can talk about
But that,
that.
again, that's getting out of the scope of this commission, sir. And they have to get approval from, I understand that, and I appreciate your problem. And believe me, I live down the other end of the beach too, so I'm concerned about this too. But this has to go through the sewer department in the city, it has to go through the state. All these other agencies do get to weigh in on what you're talking about. And I can appreciate how you feel.
And they're very comprehensive. I mean, definitely, we'll take note of that, and I'm sure they will too.
then, don't bet on it. Then I got another point here. Now, maybe the attorney can answer this. My house at 582 is in their Point de Pines Trust. And I believe some of these other lots that Laston had falls under the Point de Pines Trust that goes back to the city of Revere, 1917. Now, some of these lots that they want to build in could be illegal. I don't know. Maybe the attorney could check it out, but I'm not sure. I just want to point this out to you people. You understand?
Well, frankly, I'm not aware of that.
Well, I'm
is-
telling you, I got it right here from my deed. States right here. Whitman and Howard Engineers.
This is something that you might want to address before we have the next meeting and before we have the site visit.
Yeah, I might be wrong.
Even then, again, that doesn't really pertain to the Conservation Commission. But
Right.
like I said, we would like these kind of questions answered.
It's just some information I wanted to bring out to you people. One more thing, and I'll be out of here. Tell me, you're going to put in 360 units, and basically you're going to need 540 spaces. That probably big enough for 540 spaces?
Yes. They're all inside the building.
All inside the building. There will not be any parking on the boulevard. Or that you don't know.
All inside the building.
Did you ask for an exemption for the parking? So you meet the, yes, sir. They actually meet, unlike some other projects, they meet the requirements for the parking. That was 1.5? Or 1,
It ranges from 1.5 to 1.75 to 2, depending on the unit count.
and yours is at?
Okay,
We meet it per the unit count.
yeah.
Thank you.
One other question. Are they going to put in piles? They're going to power, power?
Yeah,
drive?
I asked them that question already, and it, go ahead.
I couldn't hear.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I answer
Go
all
ahead.
those. The question was, would there be structural piles as part of the foundation? That's not part of our, not part of the proposal at this stage, no. Not required.
No, not required?
Right.
So what's going to hold the building up if you don't put piles in?
Sir,
you talk into-
once the state went to that, they made that change in the structure and allowed for wooden structures up to 5 stories. A lot of these apartments that we have now are with a, well, I'm going to say spread foundation. It might not be the right terminology, but they don't have to have pilings. That's one of the reasons why you're seeing so much building going on right
So
now.
what, do you just make a hole in the ground and put cement in? I don't know. Because my concern is, if they do pile, if something changes, and my foundation's broke, cracks, who's going to pay for that? You guys, insurance, a bond? You're going to put up a bond for the homes on the boulevard? Performance bond?
I understand the
You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, okay, just make things check, okay.
All right,
I think that's all I got.
Thank you. So why don't I entertain a motion to continue this hearing, and we'll schedule a site inspection?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we will have a continuation of this project until September, and we will schedule a site visit whenever, usually we like to have them on a Saturday, because some of us are working and it'd be a lot easier for us. We'll arrange that after the meeting,
Okay, great.
okay? I don't know, did I take a vote? Let's check on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Thank you. Next, we have a request for a certificate of compliance from DP file 0610709. You have somebody here for that project?
Yes, I have to,
This is 327 Revere Beach Boulevard.
okay, that's what I thought.
You're a busy man tonight.
Yeah, I am. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, office at 194 Central Street in Saugus. This is a request for a certificate of compliance for 320 Revere Beach Boulevard, which is the building just to the south of the St. George. Actually, there's two properties in between the St. George and this building. It's the one that's known as the Boulevard. Construction is complete. That building has received a temporary occupancy permit. They're finally buttoning all the loose ends up to apply for a final certificate of occupancy. We did submit an as-built to this board as well as to the engineering department that identifies that the project was constructed in substantial compliance with the approved plan relative to the building elevations, the grading, the stormwater management facilities. Anyone that's been by the site, you could see it's vegetated, it's stabilized. So we're before this commission this evening to request a certificate of compliance for this order of conditions that was issued under DEP file number 061-0709.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't do a site inspection on this project after it was done, correct?
I'm not sure if the commission did or not. We submitted the certificate of compliance request. I don't know if the commission did an
When?
inspection or not. We submitted the request on July 19th.
Yeah.
As you know, we've had some things
Yeah,
going on.
yeah. So, yeah, so I guess my point is, I don't know if you did.
We'd
Certainly
like to
didn't do
just
one with
see
me.
it. I think I'd like to see it anyway. I think only Joe is probably the only member that was around, or Ian also, to sign the original order of conditions, so.
I agree with my colleague. We're not comfortable not even doing a walkthrough
Okay.
on a project like this, or any project, quite frankly.
So I guess the only question that I have is, maybe I don't even know the answer myself, but is this something that's subsequent to the walkthrough, that it could be
I could
approved by
put
the
it-
commission, or
we
would it
could-
have to go to another meeting?
No, we could put it, no, the hearing is closed.
Okay, good.
So we're not, this
So
is
we can
a
have the
certificate of
walkthrough
compliance.
and then go.
We'll do the walkthrough, and we can issue the order of conditions.
If everything's
Yeah,
good.
everything is satisfactory.
Great. Good.
Is that okay with the rest of the members?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just make some arrangements, probably on the same time that we do the other one, so it'll be on a Saturday.
Sounds good.
And we'll try to get it done as soon as
We got another
possible.
one coming, I think.
This is a request for a certificate of compliance for, wait a minute, I lost my place. File number 061-0701.
That's correct. Thank you again,
And
Mr.
this is
Chairman.
Bellevue Avenue.
Yep.
Go right ahead, sir.
Members of the commission, again, for the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance. This is a request for certificate of compliance for a property that was located on Bellevue Avenue. It was originally proposed as 2 fourplexes, which would have been 8 units. The project was since downsized during construction and was only built with 2 duplexes, so it was only 4 units. It was much smaller, but within the approved footprint. The improvements to Bellevue Ave were also included in that order of conditions. There was a very small end of the project, actually it was down in here, that extended into the 100-year floodplain. So most of this project was outside of the purview of the Conservation Commission, just the end of the fill of the roadway extended into the 100-year floodplain. Again, this included a subsurface drainage facility that was sized for the 100-year storm event, deep sump hooded catch basin, water quality structure, and roof infiltration systems for the roofs in the back. Everything was constructed in accordance with the plan. So again, I'm going to assume that the commission probably hasn't had a chance to review this one. I guess the only thing that I would ask, so this received a full occupancy permit, and the property is completely occupied. There's a homeowner that's selling one of the units. when these units were originally sold, the banks didn't have any issues that there was an outstanding order of conditions, and I guess one of the banks picked up the fact that there's an outstanding order of conditions. And I know that there's a closing that's scheduled very soon, but we can discuss the timeframe.
I can't help you with that.
Nope.
That was something that was, the occupant should, owner of the property.
Agreed.
Usually the bank catches that.
Agreed.
And that's happened before.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to wait again. We'll do a site inspection, then we'll issue a certificate of compliance at that time.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. Next, this is DP file 0610755, Caruso Companies, for a request for an amendment to an order of conditions.
Last one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, office at 194 Central Street in Saugus. This is a project that you might recall was before the commission last fall and winter. It was approved by the commission. It was basically eliminating the Northgate crushing facility and providing a lot for Avis to park cars. Went through the city council, went through site plan review, was approved by this commission. The DEP then intervened and had some questions regarding the project that resulted in some really minor tweaks to the project. I did submit correspondence from them. We're dealing with Pam Merrill at the DEP. Pam was satisfied with the information that we had submitted to her and indicated that she would like for us to return back to the commission to amend the order of conditions to get those changes that the DEP endorsed into the order of conditions. I think partially because of COVID, their preference was for us to make these changes that satisfied them, so that would allow them to withdraw so that the local commission keeps control of this project rather than issuing a superseding order and taking the control from the local commission. So that said, the first thing that was required of them is they asked us to dig test pits to verify the soil conditions that were assumed in the drainage calculations. We did that. We were aware of the filling that occurred at this site over the years and what the elevations of the natural ground were and what the elevations of the filled site are. So the test pits yielded the exact same assumptions and corroborated what was assumed in the drainage report. So they were satisfied with separation to groundwater and the makeup of the soil material. The second thing that was requested was that they asked that we label the limit of the outstanding resource water, which is really just the limit of the salt wash. They asked that we label on the plan the limit of the ACEC, which is the limit of land subject to coastal storm flowage, which was shown on the plan, so those were really just adding some labels. They also asked that we showed on the plan, there's a riverfront area that extends way over here at the easterly end of the project, and they just wanted us for completeness to show that limit of riverfront area, which extends out here, which is nowhere near the project site. Nonetheless, they wanted to see that our project wasn't anywhere near the resource area. And lastly, they asked us to pull this retaining wall back a couple of feet just to give a little bit more breathing room between the limit of the ACEC and the work. So we pulled that wall back about 2 to 4 feet, which was satisfactory to them. So all the changes that we made this project slightly smaller in footprint and really just gave the DEP some extra information that they were requiring. You know, my sense is the city probably didn't require that stuff because this commission has so much knowledge about that site. You know, you guys walked it, you saw it, and you've seen it over the years, some of you, whereas the DEP doesn't really have that that knowledge, local knowledge that this commission has, and that's why they asked for some supplemental information. So the project as a whole, you know, from a 30,000 square foot view is the same exact project that you approved. It's just we pulled the footprint back a little bit and provided some supplemental information to them relative to the soil makeup and that. You know, it's obviously the commission's decision. My sense is that the order of conditions and the special conditions would probably stay the same as what they were. It would simply just reference this new plan. But, you know, if the commission decided that they wanted to add, you know, different conditions in there, that's certainly well within your purview to do that.
I'm starting to recall when we walked that site, didn't I mention something about the slant of the pitch that was going to be? I thought it was kind of abrupt.
You did, yeah, I think you were questioning how far out the wall was going to be, and I think your sense was to want to pull it in a little bit more, and that's what we've done now.
Will this change the slant?
No,
The pitch,
the slope that's there.
The slope, that's the word I'm looking for.
The slope downhill of the wall will stay just the way that it is. It's just that the wall will be pulled further up the slope.
So that's the only major change then?
Yes.
How many, excuse me, to you, how many feet back are you putting it required? How many feet?
From where this commission approved it, we're pulling it back about 4 feet.
Thank you.
So other than that, it's really the same.
Is it still going to be an Avis?
I believe so.
Well, I think we're in this, again, we should walk, not that I really want to, because I wear out my shoes going that side,
I
but
think this one, we're good.
we should probably,
I think this one, we're good.
okay. So you're looking for us to accept the amended plans?
We'd like for the commission to issue an amended order of conditions that basically, so it's the same order of conditions except for the box, instead of boxing or checking off the box order of conditions, you check amended order of conditions, and then reference the new plan in it.
We've all seen it.
Did we get copies of this? Heather, did you send us copies of this revised plan?
Yeah, we submitted it all through the mayor's office.
Yeah, I saw it online. It's got all the details on it and some correspondence that he had with the DEP on it.
I've got an extra
Okay.
copy of it here if you'd like.
Well, then I'll entertain a motion to issue a amended order of conditions.
I'll make a motion
I'll
to
second.
amend the order of conditions.
To the new plan, the new
Correct.
site plan.
Yeah.
Second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, this is a notice of intent, and I don't have a file number. The property is 951 Revere Beach Parkway. Notice of intent.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Sean Donahue. I'm an attorney. I represent the property owner of 951 Revere Beach Parkway, Delmy Lemus, and her husband Carlos Garcia. I'm somewhat humbled after sitting here this evening and hearing the projects that are being proposed before this commission. 290 some odd units, 360 some odd units. I'm only asking for an addition to an existing structure. So I stand here humbly before you, but nonetheless, may I proceed? Thank you. Okay, at 951 Revere Beach Parkway, the land is technically comprised of 2 lots, one of which is situated at 951 Revere Beach Parkway, and then directly behind it, there's an undeveloped lot that's situated on Olive Street. My clients own both lots. Both lots are held in common ownership. If you look at the plan, there's a reference to an easement that the city of Revere holds on the land. I have spoken with the the city solicitor. I've also spoken with Mr. Stringy about the easement. When the properties came into common ownership, the need for an easement no longer existed. So what Mr. Stringy suggests is to have a certified plot plan done depicting the land without the easement, and also depicting where the sewer line will run through the property. The land consists of over 6,900 square feet of land. There's an existing two-story structure at 951 Revere Beach Parkway that my client and my clients and their children occupy. My clients recently had triplets approximately 2 years ago, so there's a significant need for additional living space. They have 2 children, and then lo and behold, they had triplets. And while we're discussing newborns, I'm proud to say that this morning my daughter had a child, giving me my 3rd grandchild, first grandson. So I say that proudly as a
Congratulations.
personal reference. This land is in partly within the FEMA AE zone. No part of the resource area, well, the resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. No part of the resource area is within an area of critical environmental concern. The addition itself will add an additional 383 square feet, more or less, of living area. The grade at the proposed addition is 11 feet. There's no plans for filling on the site, or at least none is expected. The contractor, who coincidentally was going to join me here this evening, but for an emergency situation that prohibited him from being here this evening, will provide a silt barrier around the excavated area. With that being said, I'll leave it up to the commission for any questions.
We didn't get you don't have a file number yet?
I don't. I could get one for you, but admittedly, I didn't look it up.
And what exactly is this addition? Is it, could you give us the dimensions, please?
Sure.
And how much of the area falls within a flood zone?
Did you receive a packet in connection with this? I did.
This is another one that we kind of didn't get the hard copies for.
Well, I did submit, I don't know, about 8 copies to the mayor's office. But nonetheless, does anyone have good eyesight? Because mine seems to be somewhat lacking.
It's okay, we can confirm it.
I do have it on the, there's a certified plot plan that's within the packet. And
We
the
can
dimension-
discuss it, yeah.
The dimensions are on there. It's just that my eyes aren't what they used to be, if you know what I mean.
Excuse me. We're going to have to, we'll have to take a look at this. We haven't been able to make a site inspection at all. Quite frankly, I don't know how much on the floodplain this entails. And like I said, right now, we're working kind of blind because we haven't even seen this. It's probably a very minor project, I would assume.
It is. It's just a somewhat relatively small addition. But I don't have the calculations for you insofar as how much of the addition falls within?
He doesn't have a DEP number. He'd need a number anyway.
We couldn't issue an order of conditions anyhow right now.
No.
So we'll feel more comfortable after we take a look at the site, and we can arrange for a site visit,
Sure.
and then we should be able to give you an order of conditions, assuming that everything is okay.
Sure. How we go about scheduling a site visit?
I would suggest, in this particular case, you call City Hall, ask for Bob Mara.
Bob Maher? Okay.
Yes. And he can contact us, and we'll arrange for something
Okay.
in the very immediate future.
Sure, fair enough.
What did you have for a starting date on this? Were they ready, are you ready to go with the project?
Yesterday?
Yeah, that's what everybody
Yeah,
says.
exactly.
So we're just going to, right now, we'll continue this until, we need the file number anyhow. We couldn't get an order of conditions.
I would just ask, is it possible anyone to look at, do we have internet access to look it up? No?
By then, we'll have the paperwork.
Okay. Only trying to move it forward, that's all.
Well, you can't really we can't move forward without the DEP number, without
Right.
the file number. So in that time, we'll take that time to come thoroughly review the situation.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll do. Bob Mara?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
Now, the last item on the agenda is a discussion of possible enforcement action on 350 Revere Beach Boulevard with alleged machinery and grass mowing on protected wetland west of 350 Revere Beach Boulevard. Is there anybody here? No one here. We're going to have this discussion at the next meeting also. I know we got some photos, but quite frankly, I'm not exactly sure what we were looking at in those photos. So we'll continue that until the next meeting also. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, this meeting of the Conservation Commission is adjourned. The next meeting will be in September. Thank you for your patience. Bye.
Thank you.